We also watched AEW Dynamite Fyter Fest Night 2, also July 8th, 2020.
All right, I got to say something here, though, before we even start, okay? It is absolutely time that everybody at ringside in AEW puts those fucking masks on.
That'd be handy. Yeah.
It's time, okay?
You're in Florida.
Listen, they did everything the best they could from day one. They did legitimate testing from day one. They did actual real-life coronavirus COVID testing and forehead checks. And once you pass, you've got a bracelet and you cannot leave or you have to go through the whole rigmarole again. They've been doing everything right, okay? But it's not even so much that they're doing the best they can and nothing has happened yet, with the exception of what happened with Jon Moxley because his wife caught it through WWE, okay? The reality is, it's July 9, 2020, and although they're still controversial amongst some, I won't get political here, the reality is more and more and more people are wearing masks, and counties and cities and perhaps some states, if I recall correctly, are mandating masks. I mean, at this point, it's more that in July of 2020, when you turn on a sporting event, it's now to the point where everybody except AEW is going to have masks on. If you watch UFC this weekend, everybody's going to have a mask on. If you watch WWE, everybody's got a mask on. If you watch New Japan, everybody's got a mask on. Whichever sports are coming back first, I guarantee everybody's going to have a mask on. So at this point, even if they're being responsible, by not wearing masks when you watch the show, they are coming off at this point as not being responsible. So I think that everybody should be wearing a mask. I think you should move the announcers a little bit further apart. It's not going to hurt the show. And away we go.
Private Party versus Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. An excellent opener. I have one complaint. Somebody tell Mark Quinn, stop squealing every time he gets chopped.
It used to be Cassidy.
I may have gone wrong, actually.
It was Quinn this time.
Okay, good.
Now apparently they're both doing it.
And frankly, Montez Ford of the Street Profits, not on every chop, but he'll do some screams every once in a while. And listen, it's okay to do it once in a while if you're a bad guy and you're trying to make me laugh. Private Party are good guys. And when they squeal every time they get hit, it makes me not like them. So stop that.
It makes me want the opponent to hit them harder.
Yes. So that aside, very, very good. It was a spot fest, but it was a good kind of spot fest in that while there was no storyline or build, there was no heat segment, there was no comeback, there was no turning point to the match or anything like that. The longer it went, guys did start to wear down. All these spots had an effect. So they were starting to slow down about 10 minutes in. It's not just the same pace all the way through. Private Party goes with the gin and juice. It gets countered into the V-trigger and a super bomb. And then the champs go to finish with the last call, which is where Hangman hits the flipping lariat from the outside in to the face. And at the same time, Omega hits the V-trigger, the jumping knee strike to the back of the head, and they sandwich the dude's head and then pin him. Their timing was, I guess, a little off this time. But what happened was Page hits the lariat first, which sends whoever's head it was flying backwards into Omega's knee. So instead of a sandwich, it was like a ping pong. Thing is, it looked much more violent. It looked much cooler this way. So if you can pull it off and not kill people, I endorse going for it this way. Regardless, they hit the last call. They won. It was a fun spot fest.
Yeah, I thought it was a good match. Didn't think it was a great match. A little bit of whatever here and there. Some lack of smoothness in a couple of spots. I mean, Omega and Page were great. Private Party was good, but they are still green.
Yeah.
And there are still things that, they're a little bit slow. They're a little bit out of position here and there. But There was a lot of cool spots. And the one thing I noticed was a lot of these Omega Page matches. I mean, even if it's going to be a decisive win over a team, there's a lot of near falls at the end. And sometimes I feel like there were 2 new near falls too many. Like the match peaked and then you did like a few more than you needed. This, it didn't even get to where it peaked. It was like I was expecting so many more near falls at the end, but they hit the V-trigger buckshot and they just pinned them. And that was it.
That was it.
Like, that's it. You're done. That was the end of the match. So, which is fine. It's fine to have different things here and there. But this was a very decisive victory.
It certainly was. The champions are deserving champions. Tonight on AEW Dynamite Fyter Fest, Orange Cassidy versus Chris Jericho. Nyla Rose will be in action against 2 opponents and will also be making an announcement. The Dark Order with Colt Cabana, and Colt Cabana, I should say, versus SCU. The Young Bucks and FTR versus the Lucha Bros and Butcher and Blade. And up next, Lance Archer versus Joey Janela. So, that's the next. Joey comes out and does his entrance. Lance Archer comes out and he's destroyed Sonny Kiss. And he's carrying him to the ring and throws him down and attacks Janela and the match begins. So, I'm going to jump ahead, spoil something later in the show. Big Swole gets suspended for kidnapping Britt Baker. Tony Khan took to Twitter and announced that, yes, for kidnapping, Big Swole has been suspended. Somebody pointed out to Mr. Khan that Lance Archer does a felony every single week and has not been suspended. Tony Khan then replied, and I quote, Lance Archer assaults people and then throws them at or around the ring. That's different. This is wrestling. You have to draw the line somewhere, but assault isn't it. I honestly don't know if this makes me feel better or worse about the whole thing. At least they've acknowledged it.
Well, I feel like there is a way, like it's preposterous. It's completely preposterous that Swole has been suspended and Lance Archer's just out beating the shit out of people on a regular basis and there's no repercussions. But like, at least it could have been something like Britt Baker is she's filed a restraining order because of this or serve papers. I guess it's a lawsuit. Is that what's going on? Like there's a lawsuit and they could say, well, there's a lawsuit filed against you, and we just can't have you in the building until this gets settled. Whatever. But why would the company suspend her because she fake kidnapped Britt Baker?
Well, because apparently that crosses the line, according to Mr. Khan here. You have to draw the line somewhere,
well,
he said.
Vinny,
assault isn't it.
The other, what I thought you were going to talk about was the fact that this is now the second week in a row that Sonny Kiss has just been beaten like a drum.
Yeah.
Massacred here by Lance Archer. Although he did get to do one spot there at the end, but now he's getting a shot next week against Cody for the TNT title.
Is he now?
It seems to me that perhaps Sonny Kiss should be protected a little better if he's in line with for a TNT championship shot.
Well, yes. I would not have him massacred 2 weeks in a row. And I guess it's an open challenge. So anyone who answers Cody's challenge gets a title shot. So whatever. But yes, if I was booking him to have a title shot, I would not have him destroyed. Certainly not this week. But I will say this before we move on. At least this week, it was a contracted wrestler. That makes more sense because now Sonny Kiss can say, I want to get revenge. I want to take this into my own hands and challenge Archer to a fight at some point. That's much better than random backstage geeks and cameraman or production goofs or whatever. But yes, Lance Archer is allowed to assault people in AEW. That is now canon. As for the match...
Canon.
You know how sometimes...
I feel like JR right there.
You know when we were watching those old Jim Crockett Saturday night shows and there'd be a ton of 3-minute squashes, and then there'd be one squash in like 7 or 8 minutes, and then went through a break, and there were 7 or 8 more minutes more of squashing, and then it finally ended? That's what I felt like watching this match. Lance just killed him, and killed him, and killed him, and killed him, and killed him. They went through a break. and he murder hawked him and murder hawked him and murder hawked him. There was like 1 minute of offense when Janela runs wild and Jake tries to bring the snake into the ring, and that distracts the ref, and Sonny Kiss gets to hit his one big move. And then Lance shrugs all of that off and hits Joey with the blackout off the apron through a table, which, by the way, the blackout is like a reverse Razor's Edge. So he's got him up over his head with his feet hanging on his back, and the ropes are behind them. And I was horrified when he tried this that Joey's feet were going to get stuck in the ropes. He wouldn't flip over. Thankfully, they accounted for that and pulled it off. And Joey goes to the table, and Lance slammed his head into a table because he's kind of a dick. And he threw him in, and he pinned him, and Jake was happy.
Well, I think the problem here, Vinny, is that if you're watching a lot of Joey Janela matches, I mean, every Joey Janela match is about 15 minutes of him fucking killing himself. So sure. This was just your typical match. And you got a couple of spots here and there at the end. But I didn't think it was a squash match. I thought it was a pretty good match. Thought Joey was great. Lance Archer is a great monster. Thought it was a fun little match. And I did like the spot where Sonny Kiss did hit that 450 behind the ref's back, because I think some people actually thought maybe that's going to lead to the finish, but it didn't. No. But I guess it is leading to a TNT title shot.
I enjoyed the match. It was just, it was not cookie cutter. I will say that. It was definitely not cookie cutter. A Darby Allin hype video. So he's been out about a month.
If I didn't know any better, Vinny, I would think that this was a response to us, because the video opens with Darby explaining that Brian Cage is the one that injured me and put me out of action. Wasn't it just last week we couldn't figure out why the fuck this guy was off TV?
It may have been. Yeah. So Darby says he's still not medically cleared. He's been out for like a month. So he's come to wherever he is to do some training or something, and some guy steps up and says, "Yeah, you're here at whatever land. You're here to practice coffin drops." So where they are is like professional stuntman school, and Darby Allin calmly looks behind him and gets himself in a position and then just does a coffin drop, and he falls, and he falls, and he falls, probably legit 40 feet or so. There's a big giant foam pit like you had at the gymnastics school, and Darby Allin hits the chunks of foam rubber and vanishes. He has been swallowed by the earth. I watched this again, and he fell legitimately for 3 full seconds. It's a long time to go down.
This looked like an easy 30 feet or so.
And it's a coffin drop, so he's looking up at the sky. He has no idea when he's going to land. This man has balls. There's no doubt about that. Schiavone interviews Taz and Brian Cage. Taz says, Tony Schiavone, I wanted you here. You have been a part of so many iconic moments in this sport. Tonight, you'll be a part of another iconic moment. Tonight, Jon Moxley was supposed to defend his title against the Machine, Brian Cage. That will happen next week, and Brian Cage will be crowned the new AEW World Champion. But that brings me to what's in my hands, something I created decades ago, my full body of work, my blood, my sweat, and my tears. The FTW World Championship. And he pulled out the orange championship belt. He used it in an angle in the original ECW in 1999. Says no promotion has ever recognized this, but wrestling fans worldwide know the man who holds this championship is the baddest son of a bitch on the planet. That man is no longer uncrowned. That man is no longer going in a fight for the fallen without a championship. Brian Cage is the new FTW champion. This is some renegade shit, brother. Hey, Mox, your ass is done, buddy. Taz rules. Have we mentioned that yet?
It's a great promo, but I mean, I'm still flabbergasted because they must have some sort of plan. But to me, next week is Jon Moxley versus Brian Cage. If Jon Moxley wins, is he the new FTW champion? And if not, Brian Cage gets the FTW belt and immediately loses and then remains the FTW champion? If Moxley wins, does he get 2 belts? If Cage wins, does he have 2 belts? Like, I think I'm presuming Brian Cage loses. I don't know, but I presume he does. So shouldn't it be something like they have a really good match and there's something weird about the finish or whatever, and then Taz says, you know what, you should be the champion right now. So I'm giving you this renegade shit, this FTW title. You're the rightful FTW World Heavyweight Champion or whatever. And then, like, he can go from there and kill a bunch of guys. Doesn't that make more sense than giving it to him right before he goes in to lose?
That would have made sense. Yes, that is a good story. I can only assume maybe Moxley wins, but then steals the belt, and that gives Cage an excuse to have another rematch. He can chase him down for revenge to get the FTW belt back. I don't know. Yeah, they have earned the benefit of the doubt that this will pay off sooner or later. So we'll see how it goes. The Butcher and the Blade and the Lucha Brothers versus the Young Bucks and FTR. Best match on either show in I don't know how long. Just amazing
stuff. On a granny scale, I would say this would be a 10.
This was a 10 on the granny scale for sure. So the key to this is, besides the fact that all 8 guys worked their asses off and just destroyed each other and everything looked great, there was still a story to it too, which is FTR and the Young Bucks. They have, the nicest way to put it would be a professional rivalry. They someday want to see who is the best team. And they want each other to be at 100% when that happens. So while they are not friends, they were on the same side tonight. So early in the match, they were not getting along, but this is not WWE, so not getting along doesn't mean when you tag in, I will push you and put my finger in your chest and we'll go nose to nose. Not getting along means a young buck will blind tag himself in, and Dax or Cash will be surprised, but they still want to win, and so they get out of the ring. They're not openly fighting each other. They're just on different pages, because it's subtle, and you don't need to slap everyone in the face with it. But then, as the match goes on, and we're 10 or 15 minutes into this, the Bucks, we get a bunch of double teams where it's a trademark Buck spot or a trademark FTR spot, but there's one guy from each team doing all these spots. As they know each other so well, they can fill in for each other, and they're getting along together so well, they can work together to whip a ton of ass. It's just awesome. The biggest spot that everyone's going to remember from this, I can't even describe it except to say there's a bunch of guys on the floor, a few guys in the ring, and Rey Fenix runs, he jumps off Pentagon's back, and as a Canadian destroyer to somebody over the ropes onto the pile of men outside the ring. It was unbelievable. As Tony Schiavone put it, if you're not digging this, something's wrong with you. And then that was the high point, so it's time for the finish. Nick Jackson does a super kick. He accidentally kicks Dax, and the Lucha Brothers grab Nick, hit a horrifying double pile driver, and they pinned him. This would have been the best match on most pay-per-views. Just super, super wrestling. And then, because not everything has to be blown off in one night, the Bucks and FTR at the end, though in the end they failed to work together and they came up short tonight, they still shook hands out of respect. The storyline has a long payoff. There's a long con going on here. It was great.
Yeah, I thought this match was great. Obviously, we're doing the slow build towards the big explosion between FTR and the Bucks. I mean, if it's my company, which it's not, FTR wins the tag team titles at some point from Omega and Hangman. I think that's going to be a key part of the story. And then ultimately, the big match is a tag team title match, which quite frankly, I think the first Bucks versus FTR match with the tag titles on the line, I think FTR has to win that match. But that's a long way down the road. Tonight, we had the 8-man. Absolutely, absolutely fantastic. And I don't know virtually anything about what they were doing putting together this match, but I can only guess that they all got together and the first words out of their mouths were, all right, so here's the story. And that's it. Like, this was a fantastic match, but it started with, what's the story? Mm-hmm. What's the idea here? And they came up with a story, and they built a match around that story, and they did every fucking crazy move you've ever seen. The Canadian Destroyer to the pile outside was just the craziest thing I ever saw. I mean, there were so many great things in this match, and I loved it. Thought it was by far the best match on either show. One of the best matches of the year.
It actually was.
Just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. It's a strong endorsement. If you have not seen it, please go out of your way to see this. Earlier today, Big Swole arrives at the building. Alex Marvez is there, and there was a woman there who I don't know who she was. But they informed Big Swole that she was not allowed into the building. And the woman who's with Marvez says they take her conduct seriously. She has been served. And they serve her with papers. And Swole reads the papers, learns that she has been suspended. And she says, this is nothing but that trick. And then I think she said her name was Brittany Basuda Baker. Which is a new one. Then she does exactly what I would have done in this situation. She looks at them and says, you could have called me for this. Have you ever heard of me? Fax machine.
She would not have done what you did, Vinny. She did what Dave would have done and said, I've got a fax machine.
That's actually valid. But my point was...
a fucking fax machine. I realized it was all supposed to be comedy and everything like that. But,
yes.
I mean, Jesus God. I mean, come on. A fax machine is 2020.
How old do you think Big Swole is? Do you think she's ever actually used a fax machine?
There's no way in hell Big Swole has ever used a fax machine. I've barely ever used a fax. The last time, I swear to God, fact for everybody, the last time I used a fax machine was the year 1999. Might have been 98, actually. It was 1998, now that I think about it. It was 1998 when I sent a fax to Dave asking him if he needed somebody to replace Scott Hudson, who was leaving number 4 on the Wrestling Observer hotline. I swear to God.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was actually too scared to call Dave. I also hated calling people because every time Tim Flowers called, it was like a nightmare. So to this day, I have PTSD about my phone ringing.
You know what?
So I sent him a fucking fax, and that was the last time I've ever used a fax machine. 1998. I'm not even sure Big Swole was alive in 1998. Hold on a second.
Well, while you look that up, my point was more, I would care less about the actual suspension and more about the fact that I had just driven 3.5 hours to learn I was suspended when they could have let me know at any point along the drive that I was suspended. I could just stay home. That's what would have pissed me off. Nyla Rose versus Kinsey Page and Kai-Lin King. These two women were
doesn't give her age.
No scoop then?
No, I got no scoop.
Kinsey Page and Kai-Lin King were there to be horror movie victims. They were tremendous horror movie victims. They were terrified the whole way, and in the end, they died. Nyla did a bunch of power spots. We're trying to throw both women around at the same time or throw one woman into the other, but she's big and strong, but she's not like a Keith Lee or a Michael Elgin where she just throw people miraculously and carry two people at once. So it's not quite as impressive as other power matches I've seen. But what was that?
It's my phone. I dropped it.
It sounded like you collapsed.
Don't worry about it.
So Nyla power bombs Paige onto King and she wins. Then it's time for her announcement. She begins by saying, actions speak louder than words. And then she says like 50,000 words. So the story is she has hired a manager, but she's not ready to tell us who it is. And she talks and she talks and she talks and she talks and she talks. She says, essentially, she comes at her and says, I need a mouthpiece, and then talks for a long time. And finally, she points out Cody is a champion. He is a manager. Brian Cage is now a champion. He is a manager. Soon I will have a manager. And soon, she says, I will leave AEW very soon, the AEW Women's Champion. So I guess she's leaving the company with a belt now. I don't know. A very strange mystery angle.
Just what we need, another manager. Although all the managers have been great, so I guess I
a lot of managers on the show. They've all been great so far. But I won't pretend that I'm going to spend the next 7 days thinking, man, I wonder who's going to manage Nyla Rose. So Colt Cabana is in the trainer's room. I don't know what happened. They said he was thrown into a barricade last week.
Okay, so I said the same thing last night. That's actually not true. Apparently, it was in a match a few weeks ago. And I don't know what match, I don't know what spot, but it is a legitimate, horrifying body-sized hematoma on his side.
He has a bruise.
Which he did, in fact, get clearance to wrestle with.
He has a bruise on the side of his body, basically from his ass to his pec. It's gigantic. But he has been cleared to wrestle. And Brody Lee says, we don't know what happened. We don't know who caused it. But with the Dark Order watching your back, it won't happen anymore. Tonight, we have a 6-man tag. Get up and go get ready.
And actually, what really happened here was he got this injury, and it looked like this. And so they decided to do this pre-tape because they figured, fuck, dude, you got a hematoma like this, we got to turn this into an angle. That's what they did.
And work it into the story of the match.
Yes.
So the key is Brody orders Colt to drag his busted carcass off this trainer's table and go put his gear on and get ready to fight. And all Colt says is, you got it, Mr. Brody. He called him Mr.
in.
Brody. He's in.
He's now Colt Cabana.
He is, in fact, a Colt Cabana. Brody Lee and Stu Grayson and Colt Cabana versus SCU. The rest of Dark Order's up on the stage, and there's Evil Uno and Grayson, or not Stu Grayson, Silver and
Grayson's
Reynolds.
in the match.
Excuse me, Silver and Reynolds. And then there's 10, and now there is also 5. I don't know who 5 is or where he came from, but there's a 5 now. So they're doing this match.
I wonder if 6 will debut soon.
You would think.
Sean Waltman.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I believe he's available. So
They should have a guy named 8 who's just really fat.
I get it. I get it. So they're doing this match. Cabana tags in, and it starts off, he's doing like headlocks and arm bars, and everything's going fine. But then whoever's in with him does a go behind and just does a waist lock. And Cabana's body is racked with pain. He screams, drags himself to the ropes. He begs for a break. He goes to tag out, but no. Brody orders him, get back in there and fight. So it makes sense in the concept of the story. It led to a very weird match. So SCU, the good guys, get the heat on Colt Cabana. Colt is dragging himself to make a hot tag. He eventually makes the hot tag to Brody Lee, who gets in the ring, and then SCU makes a comeback on him. And then Brody and Stu are making a comeback 2-on-3. It's all very bizarre. Finally, Daniels hits a moonsault. Cabana breaks the pin. Daniels is very mad at him for some reason. All he did was break up a pin. But Brody takes Daniels' head off with a clothesline. He orders Stu to tag Colt in. Colt gets the win. It's absolutely fantastic storytelling. As a match in a vacuum, it was really bizarre.
I couldn't figure out, like, I was fine with everything that you talked about, except the one spot where Colt Cabana pulled Daniels off as he was making a cover, and Daniels got mad.
Yeah, I don't know why
That's
he got
like one
mad.
of those spots you do if your partner pulls you off in like a 2-on-1 match or a handicap match or a 3-way or something, like it's your buddy. Like, I realize that Colt is normally a good guy, but it's a fucking 6-man tag, dude. You're on different teams. He pulled you off so your team wouldn't win. That's totally fair. Daniels was just angry about it.
If he had, like, taken the referee so the ref couldn't count, or if he had put the dude's leg on the ropes to break up the pin, then there's, like, gray area cheating going on, and it would make more sense. But guys break up the pin in every match. Everyone does. So I don't know why Daniels was so angry about that. Next,
I do like storytelling here. I like this little angle, and Colt was very happy to win. And the Dark Order, like, you know what I like about this? I got to praise this because I was critical of this a few weeks ago. One of my big complaints about the Dark Order was they can never recruit anybody.
Yes.
Like, what the fuck kind of a cult is this if they can't recruit anybody, okay? So not only are they successfully recruiting Colt Cabana, but the storytelling explains to you, the viewer, exactly why Colt Cabana is considering joining the Dark Order.
Yes, yes.
They are giving him what he needs.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the storyline. I think this is what the Dark Order needs. I like it. And Colt Cabana is a big enough name that it's not like we're just recruiting some random dude in a mask named 2 who could never get a pin or whatever the wacky angle is. Like, we got a name here that's turning to the dark side.
Next week at Fight for the Fallen, Cody's open challenge for the TNT title. See, here they have not named Sonny Kiss as the challenger yet. The Lucha Bros versus FTR, which sounds awesome. The Elite, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks against all three of Jurassic Express. And the main event, Jon Moxley and Brian Cage for the AEW World title, and I guess for the FTW World title.
I think it's actually only for the AEW title, so I presume that Cage is just losing and keeping his belt.
We'll see how it goes. So we have some stuff with Britt Baker. She wants them to. She's been at the just off the announce desk this entire show, and she passes them a note saying every time they plug JR's book, they should also plug her merchandise. This is all just a setup, so Big Swole in disguise can sneak back into the building and confront Britt, and she's yelling at Britt, and Britt's yelling at her, and Reba's there, and 2 or 3 of the fans there screaming at each other, and my wife's like in the next room, but I hear her shout, "That's a lot of yelling you're watching." You're right. So eventually, Swole wads up the suspension paper. She throws it into Reba's face. Reba reacts by throwing her hands back, backhanding Britt Baker in the face, and apparently breaking her nose. This, of course, leads to Britt having a breakdown.
Is that what happened?
That's to the best of my knowledge.
I thought, I could be totally wrong here, but I thought Swole crumpled up the piece of paper and threw it, and the paper hit Britt in the nose, and Britt was selling it like she'd broken her nose because she got hit with a piece of paper.
Huh. Well, I mean, she is a whiny character. Maybe that's, I don't know. Maybe I saw that and my brain cannot process that actually happened, so I imagine somebody must have hit her in the face. That's how I saw it. Perhaps I will go back and watch, although I don't think I will. I'll just watch. I'll see what happens next week, and if I'm wrong, I will tell you here next week. The point is, Britt thinks her nose is broken. She's grabbing her face. She's screaming and wailing. Tony Schiavone says, "We need a doctor." And Jim Ross dismissively says, "She is a doctor." To which Tony replies, "Yeah, but she's a dentist." She's going to kill him. Do you understand me? I'm actually in fear for Tony Schiavone's life right now.
He's going to be in a friend timeout again.
Oh, this is going to be a bad friend timeout, my man. Friend timeouts, this friend timeout may involve gunshots. It is time for the main event, Orange Cassidy versus Chris Jericho. So much to talk about here. So Orange comes out first.
I thought the match was great.
Well, you can get that's undoubtedly true. That is a fact. This match was great. And anyone who tells you otherwise is flat out wrong. Orange comes out. He has his own music now. He has been before just been using the Best Friends theme. Now he's his own music. He's with the Best Friends. But before he gets in the ring, he removes his denim jacket and his t-shirt and his sunglasses. He hands them to the Best Friends. He dismisses them. He means business. He's going to take care of this on his own. Jericho comes out with Santana and Ortiz.
Why is my daughter awake right now? It's 11 o'clock.
Did my yelling wake her up?
I don't think it's your yelling. I don't think it's mine either, but like, what is she doing up at 11 o'clock?
Do you want to go
I'm
find
all
out?
Distracted.
Yeah,
I'll go for it. I'm in the loft. I'm locked up here.
So Santana and Ortiz are both drinking gallons of orange juice, which JR points out that's probably a screwdriver, and wouldn't surprise me. But so they get in the ring for a face-off, and this should not be news to anyone, but Orange Cassidy is tiny. He has like the proportions and like the body distribution of a normal-sized man, so you don't really realize it, but he's like 40 pounds smaller than Jericho. He's just a little guy. But God damn it, can this guy go? And you probably are not all surprised by the athleticism and the lucha libre and the technical wrestling. This dude has like the best punches and elbows maybe in all of wrestling right now. He's laying in, or he's probably not laying in these shots, but it looks like he's laying in these shots, and they all look brutal. They're just awesome. Jericho just has an old school match with him. He lets him run wild for a while, but eventually, because he's so much bigger, he just catches him on one of his little flippy moves, hits a spine buster, hits a Boston Crab, and Orange gets the ropes, but Santana and Ortiz hit him with a mad ball from the outside, and there's the heat. Jericho works him over forever, including the abdominal stretch in the rope spot, which is awesome. So Orange makes his comeback, and in utter defiance of Chris Jericho, he does the Orange Cassidy shtick, where he's working very slowly and throwing gentle kicks at his shins and rearing back. But it's all a ruse to get Jericho to let his guard down. And at the right moment, Orange just hauls off and super kicks him right in the face and drops him. Runs wild for a while. He had a top rope splash that I can't describe except to say it looks exactly what Orange Cassidy would look like doing a top rope splash. It's like, it's cool, but it's also very lazy at the same time. I'm not trying to describe it. He gets about 24 near falls in this. A diving DDT, a Michinoku driver, all sorts of things. Jericho gets in the Boston Crab. Orange does a great job teasing the submission, but he turns it into a cradle, hits his big giant punch. The Proud and Powerful throw orange juice in Orange's eyes. The Best Friends attack. All of this melee lets Jericho hit a back shot and a code breaker, but it's not the finish. Orange still kicks out of the code breaker. He keeps on winning, does his DDT move for a near fall, but he goes to the Superman punch, and Jericho catches him with a Judas effect, and that's the end of that. Chris Jericho wins. That match ruled.
This match was awesome. As noted, just an old school, obviously by design. Jericho's goal was to get this guy over as big as possible, give him everything, but then beat him in the end. And obviously one of these days, either Orange Cassidy or Darby Allin or Jungle Boy or, one of these guys is going to get a big win over somebody. But this was not the time for Jericho to do a job here, especially if Jericho's going to be facing Mike Tyson. I watched the match. Yeah. I thought Orange Cassidy could have won. It wouldn't have hurt Chris Jericho one bit. Like, this match was so good that, honestly, whether Orange Cassidy won or lost, it was going to help Orange Cassidy, and it was not going to hurt Chris Jericho. But even though Jericho won, as I noted yesterday, Jericho's got several finishes. He's got the Codebreaker. He's got the Lion Tamer. He's got the back elbow. And Orange Cassidy escaped the Lion Tamer twice. He kicked out of the Codebreaker after a shot by a baseball bat. And then finally, he ate the back elbow. So he kicked out of every single one of Jericho's moves. They could not have put the guy over stronger. It was a long singles main event match that got him over as I think everybody's seen his match with Pac. I think everybody knows that Orange Cassidy can go. But after this match on national television, the Pac match, I think, was on pay-per-view, if I recall. But this was like the first long singles television match with Orange Cassidy. And when it was over, he's established. He's a made man. And you can put him in main events, and everything's going to be fine. And I just thought it was such a great match to do that. There were a few things in the match, like technically, like Orange Cassidy is great, but he did so much lucha-style stuff in Chikara for so many years that there are certain things that when he does them in the context of a traditional pro wrestling match with a guy like Jericho, like things look a little bit awkward. Like sometimes when he's hitting the ropes, but it's not a lucha spot, he still puts his hand back, like the lucha where you grab the middle rope with the other hand.
That's how he hits
sometimes
the ropes.
Everything, but it kind of slows everything down a little bit, and there was like one spot where it looked like they did the old bullfighter spot where he ran the wrong way or whatever. I mean, there were a couple of things like that, but I mean, overall, for the first match these two guys ever had together, first match they ever had in the ring together, live, well, it wasn't live, but I mean, it was pretty much live.
It was live to tape. Yeah.
I mean, they had a hell of a match. And it was one of those matches where, as good as it was, if they do it again, the second one's probably going to even be better. So I just thought this match was great. And I was thinking about the double title match. Like, what do you put on against the double title match? You can't put the private party match. I mean, maybe, I was advocating for like the Bucks and FTR because I just knew that was going to be like a crazy blow-away match, which it was. And that probably would have been a really good match to put in the main event. But for what the goal was here, which was to make Orange Cassidy, this match should have been the main event. You do this exact same match in the middle of the show, and it's like a good performance by Orange Cassidy. But I don't feel that he gets as over doing that than actually being in the main event slot, the main event of the television show against Chris Jericho. So I think it was the right call, and I think it was a great match.
Yeah, that's a really solid point. And as much like the 8-man tag was a better match, but I don't know if anyone is more over coming out of it than they were going in. And Orange Cassidy is undeniably now a bigger star than he was going in. So hooray for them. Well,
so now it's time, Vinny.
It's time to vote. Now, sometimes we come out here and we say, you know what? Both shows were good, but this is like it's a 10-9 round. I'm going to go with whatever. This week is like NXT was a 10, but AEW was an 11 or 12. Like NXT was a very, very, very good show, but there's no doubt in my mind that I enjoyed AEW more, so I'm voting for AEW.
Well, obviously the strength of NXT was they had some good matches on the show, and they had a great main event. Great main event with Adam Cole and Keith Lee. But the other show also had a great main event, and it also had one of the best matches of the entire year.
That's a strong point.
That's it. AEW wins. They are the winner this week.
There you go. I suppose now you're going to ask me to look up the date of Saturday night's main event, aren't you?